All right, everyone, we need to be more comfortable with women having their period because it's a creative and deeply transformative process, and we need to be able to say menstruation like nothing's wrong with it. Menstruation.
Menstruation.
You're saying it like you're celebrating.
I'm sorry, but
I guess that's a good way to say it.
I'm just so excited to hear all of you guys say that word.
Menstruation.
Menstruation.
Okay.
We need to put the men back in menstruation. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, gosh. Get out of here, Joe Rogan. All right. That's right, everyone. Today we're going to review the Academy Award-nominated 2016 film 20th Century Woman, starring Annette Benning and Lucas Jade Zumann. But first, this is A24 on the Rocks, a film review podcast where we drink and review every A24 film in chronological order of distribution. And I'm your unreliable narrator and host for tonight, Eric Kiska. And I'm drinking a classic Pabst Blue Ribbon, a throwback to simpler times for beer. Up next, we have the Greta Gerwig to my Noam Baumbach, my wife, Kelly.
Oh my goodness, is that quite the introduction that I hope to live up to, possibly one day, maybe. Oh, I'm all flustered. Hello, my name is Kelly, and I'm also drinking a PBR because Eric and I live in the same house, and we're really frugal. After me comes another one of our hosts.
Good evening, world. This is Kevin K. Konachek, and tonight I'm not going to break up the tradition too much here. I'm drinking some more whiskey. That's right. I'm going to go with a Michter's Single Barrel Straight Kentucky Rye Whiskey. Why? Because I can, and it's delicious, and I don't need to explain myself because I am an adult. Next we have...
Hey, it's Cole William Whitlaw Gibson, resident Canadian. Tonight I'm drinking a classic White Claw Seltzer Tangerine Edition.
A24.
All right.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So, as previously mentioned, we are reviewing the film 20th Century Woman tonight. It was written and directed by Mike Mills and had its premiere at the New York Film Festival on October 8th, 2016. It was then distributed by A24 on December 28th, 2016, making it the last film distributed by A24 in 2016, meaning tonight marks our 45th film and 4th year of A24 films we've reviewed, which I think deserves
Holy
a round
crap.
of applause, everyone.
That's
impressive.
And a round
Go
of
us.
drinks.
4 years.
Shots for everyone.
I like that. Fireball? Maybe. It is whiskey. Come on.
If I had it, maybe. Well, usually with these historic films, I like to set the scene and mark some history that happened in the year that the film took place, but today, I don't think I need to do that since the film did such a wonderful job setting us in the time and place. It is 1979 in Santa Barbara, California, and at the start of this film, we are introduced to Dorothea, played by Annette Benning, and Jamie, played by Lucas Jade Zumann. Dorothea is a single mother raising Jamie with two tenants in her house, William, played by Billy Crudup, and Abby, played by Greta Gerwig, who is also the acclaimed director of such films as Barbie and Lady Bird. Jamie is friends with a girl named Julie, played by Elle Fanning, who sneaks into their house and sleeps in his bed every night. Jamie is obviously in love with her, but Julie does not feel the same way about him, yet still sleeps in his bed every night. I usually don't like asking general vibes at the start of our discussion, but I feel this film had such a powerful introduction that I can't skate past it. So I will ask a slightly different question here to Kelly. Kelly, what did you think of our writer and director? What did you think he was trying to say when he started out this film with a car spontaneously bursting into flames?
I feel like that's such a way to start your movie that's like immediately, let's get into action. And it's not like an action flick. So by that, I kind of mean that's a turning point in their life, especially when it's framed in the way where Dorothea at the time, I mean, our narrator changes a lot throughout the movie. At this time, Dorothea's giving us the backstory on everything that Car's been through and kind of introducing us to the start of our characters. I love this tool that's used, but to go back to kind of that car being on fire, it's like, okay, the things that happened before we saw this movie are all in flames. And what happens from now that we're watching it and forward is the start of something fresh. And it's such like it really doesn't paint a picture. What am I trying to say? It makes a snapshot in my head. Like I can see that shot right now if I just think about it. The way that they have the car at like that 45-degree angle and the way that the mom and son are running towards it established such like a presence of craft in the film immediately. So I thought it was a really, really exciting opening, and everything that came afterwards, it kept up to that bar. So I thought it was a really stunning way to start a movie. I thought it was a brilliant idea.
Kevin, your thoughts on the car spontaneously bursting into flames?
I certainly enjoyed it just about as much as Kelly, I feel like. What I enjoyed specifically was the reaction of our main characters to the car being on fire. The facial expressions, the body language of kind of this, oh, well, there went the car. Something about the way that they had a quick interaction about describing, our main character said something along the lines of that car was beautiful, right? And Jamie, her son, basically is like, what? That was a piece of junk, essentially. It smelled like oil and it constantly was overheating. And I wrote down that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And I really thought that that was going to be a major theme, essentially, throughout the entire theme or the rest of the film. And I really kind of knew that that was a literal fire, but also a metaphorical fire, essentially. And that a lot of what we were going to see in this movie probably was going to revolve around this idea of combustion, right? This idea of things on fire, chaos, sometimes violence. Yeah. So I loved it, and it was a cool way to start the film.
That was like Jamie's dad's car, right? I think, yeah. So I feel like it might have been the past literally getting lit on fire and like a new stage of their life beginning. That's what I think I kind of got from it. But speaking of all these awesome characters here, the film gives great background on each of our characters to the point where it feels like each character gets their own chapter as if it were a book. So my first question is, or my question to Cole here is, out of all these characters, what character did you feel was your spirit character and why?
Oh boy, spirit character and why?
No pressure, buddy.
Yeah, jeez Louise. I mean, I really liked all these characters a lot. There's not really one that I would say I like specifically jived with in terms of my life, but I really did like Greta's character. I think it was Allie. Yeah,
Abby.
I really liked her character and just like kind of her whole vibe and stuff. And then obviously she's was dealing with a lot of the the cancer and all that stuff, but I really liked her character. I, however, do not want kids or have any desire for that, so that's where we kind of diverge a little bit. So maybe I kind of go into the Elle Fanning character a bit, but I don't know if there's necessarily one that I would call my spirit animal.
Julie.
Yeah, Julie, but I really did like all the characters and the way they fleshed them all out, and they all have their unique spin and like different stages of life. But I guess I'll just do the main character, Jamie. I mean, I was the only son with 3 sisters and a mom and a stepmom, and surrounded by women a lot. So I had to do, heard a lot about menstruation and all those things and feminism and all that stuff from them. So maybe I'll just I'll go that route.
Yeah, I feel like I want to be William, but I'm actually Jamie. Because I'm a little more emotional, and I had two sisters and a mom growing up, so my house there was more women in it than men, and yeah, I felt vibes with Jamie, especially my teenage self. I definitely think could have been my spirit character. Kelly, how about you?
The reason we can even have this conversation is because of how well thought out all these characters are, and I just want to take this opportunity to say too, I love how they like introduced each other's backstories, because it just has this like layer of intimacy of them really knowing each other that like it made me feel really warm and fuzzy inside. I just loved it. I did not consider this, so I know I want to say Abby because she's like punk rock and super awesome and gets into fights. But I think that in another world, I would be Dorothea. And this is a world where I don't find an Eric, and I would just be living on by my own and being kind of like cool with that. But like also, I think the defining characteristic about her that I saw in myself is that if anyone gets close to defining her or making an assumption about her, she is deeply offended. And I resonate with that so much, because as soon as someone tries to like paint any kind of box around me, I'm like, well, I'm not going to be that now. And so with even her getting asked out at work and they're like, well, we kind of thought you were a lesbian, you can see it's her ability to act, Annette Benning, where even though she's still smiling at him, you see the light just kind of like harden in her eyes. When her son gets really close to actually like figuring out something about his mom, she is just like, oh, you think you read a book and now you know about me, huh? Like, and she has that way of being really playful in the way, and like witty in the way that she speaks. And I would like to hope that I can kind of do that too. So that's just me gassing myself up, taking the opportunity to do so. But I liked her character very much.
For sure. And Mike Mills he does an interesting technique here to build each character in this film. He uses mostly historical montages of the person and also juxtaposes that to what was like going on in the country. So Kevin, what did you think of the use of historical montages to establish our characters?
I really enjoyed the entire use of not just the montages, but kind of what you guys were all alluding to in earlier parts of the way they established all of the characters from start to finish, with the introduction to using those historical montages to establish the character, to the way they even finished their characters' stories. I thought that there was just a uniqueness that kind of encapsulated what you said, Eric, that it felt like a chapter in a book. And that, to me, is kind of the major strength of this movie, is that it gives you equal parts attention to all the characters involved without having to necessarily give them their unique, distinct stories. They are intertwined within each other. They do a phenomenal job of writing the dialogue to express a lot of the history and things that you don't necessarily need to see on screen. And the writing is the major strength of this film, and it comes across very strong in these scenes, especially in the uses of those montages where you need a lot of information in a small amount of time.
Yeah, definitely. Cole, no, you're a big history fan. What did you think of the use of historical montages in this?
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed it and appreciated it. I think Mike, what's his last name? The director / writer, Mike Mills. Yeah,
Mike Mills.
I think he, very, very talented just to be able to write kind of all these diverging stories and then integrate some of these like almost flashbacks and then also all this historical information and montages and stuff. Very, very well put together. And I really liked all the, like you said, all the historical pieces that they throw in to kind of give you some additional context of what's happening, around the world, with the, the presidential speeches to some of like the riots or the wars and things, and kind of also give you context to, when these people were born and what they saw in each stages of their life as you're seeing all the various stages of everyone else's life. I thought it was very cool. It kind of gives you, kind of opens people's eyes maybe more to understanding different generations and why certain people have different thoughts and feelings about things because they had to experience, the Vietnam War or the Depression or, the rise of feminism and the movements of punk rock and, I don't know, stuff like that. I thought it was very cool and very well done.
Yeah, I agree. I think it did a great job of juxtaposing generations and, like, showing the difference between each one with what they grew up in and why they might be the way they are. And that's, like Dorothea's parenting is very much like what Jamie keeps saying. She grew up in the Great Depression where everybody raised everyone. And that makes sense. She has two tenants that she literally asks to help raise Jamie and to make him become a better man. Her idea of a better man, I should say. And although I feel like there was like great drama in this film, it felt very slice of life in my opinion at the same time. At its heart, I feel like it's a coming of age film for every character in this movie. And the tensions lie in each character's inability to get to the next stage of their life. And Kelly, I'm going to ask you, what were the main conflicts and drama with our two youngest characters, Jamie and Julie?
I would like to not answer this question first. This is
okay.
So yeah,
right.
I want our audience to know too. We watched this yesterday, and I found it really a profound movie. And for me, when I see something that really is profound to me, I gotta stew on it. I need to meditate for a moment. I hadn't considered this kind of conflict, so I need a moment to think about it.
For sure.
All right, so we are talking about our two youngest characters, right? It's Jamie and
Julie. Yep.
I'm going to be sensitive with this one. The idea of a friend zone is a reality that is hard to put into words unless you've truly been in a spot where your affection towards someone is spurned away, and the only reason they can give you is that they're too good of friends, or they want to ruin the relationship. And once you've kind of felt that, and the complete hopelessness of, I don't understand because we both like each other, but you won't for whatever reason, right? So my point is that this movie did a very good job for me of kind of encapsulating that hopelessness on Jamie's part, but his inability to cut that out of his life. How her as a person is so much more important than the fact that he's not getting any in this particular circumstance. Mm-hmm. The age difference is definitely important in this relationship. That's to answer your question again. What is a conflict between a 15-year-old boy who's learning about the world and a 17-year-old girl who's kind of been through that and started seeing some of the other things that are on the adult side of things. That is also a conflict. And then, of course, the idea of having this safety net. This idea that not just Jamie, but his household, his mom, the tenants, the communal family is something that she doesn't get at home from her mom, who's more clinical in her diagnosis of everything. And it doesn't have to make sense in Jamie's world. So those are kind of some of the conflicts that I think were really important in those relationships.
Yeah. I definitely felt like with Julie's character, her mom was a therapist and did so much, she did therapy work with all these other girls that were her age, but like she herself was not getting the same kind of love from her mom, and I felt like she had trouble accepting love or maybe even wanting love at all in the first place. Jamie on the opposite end, I feel there's a bit of fragile masculinity there. Like when you get quote unquote friend zoned, your ego gets bruised and the fragile masculinity comes out, but at the same time, he's only 15 years old and he's trying to find himself. And I think Jamie's main conflict might be trying to find himself in this world and where his place is, where he has a single mom, he has two other tenants that live with him, doesn't really know his dad at all. And it's just like kind of a story. His story is him finding where he fits in the world. Do you think that's fair, Kelly?
Yeah, I'm also thinking about something else. I think it's kind of fair, but I don't think I don't see toxic masculinity in him necessarily.
Toxic and fragile, I think, can be two different things.
Yeah.
I think.
I don't know that I agree that I see those in him.
Okay.
But I was kind of thinking about the conflict for both of these characters, and I think for both of them it is their mothers, kind of how you talked about how Julie's mom is a therapist, so her relationship with her mom, it seems that she's overanalyzed and made to think about emotions so much to the point where it's kind of suffocating. And then with Jamie, his problem is that his mom is like passing him off to have other people raise him, thinking that it's going to help, but for him it makes him feel kind of distant from his mom, who is his person. And then on top of that, you add these childhood friends that have both gone through puberty, and now their relationship is changing, and maybe they aren't really ready for that whole conversation. So Julie's like, well, just freeze in place and share a bed. So it's interesting. It's like, it's a good age to have Jamie be, where he's still boyish and not quite like a guy, like he's not a man yet. I'm rambling, but I think that that's kind of their conflict. It's their age and it's this mom relationship, because that plays huge into the themes of the movie.
Yeah, and the reason I think that maybe Jamie is trying to find himself, he's doing things like, I don't know, just these kids are making each other faint. I'm cool with
Yeah.
doing that too.
Yeah.
And that was such a traumatic scene. I guess it was a Monday. I was having some anxiety, and I actually started crying when I saw him faint. And even though I knew he would live because I've seen this movie before, it like something about the anxiety of that scene actually made me cry. And that was a very it was well done in a scary it was a scary moment. But yeah,
What I loved about that scene is his explanation to his mom, how innocent it was, everyone else was doing it. That's real. Peer pressure is real as hell. Any kid who's ever dealt with that can absolutely tell you in a second that peer pressure is as big as it gets. So that was just so simple, like you wouldn't understand, which also kind of goes into the rest of the theme of this whole movie, where she definitely doesn't understand really kind of, what's going on in his world, and it's evident in a lot of different places.
Yeah, for sure. Well, moving up in the generations, Cole, what did you think the main conflicts with Abby and William were?
Abby, I think it started out with her. She definitely is, very heavy on the feminist side, like short haircut, dyed her hair, punk rock scene. So she's like kind of feels like the first generation of the kind of the punk rock era, and subverting expectations for women and trying to find herself and her people. And then it evolves into her obviously dealing with her cervical cancer and the possibility of not having children. And again, it's that kind of crossroad that we're seeing in these different generations, where before, a whole woman's purpose, from a society aspect, was to have children. And now she's being told that she might not ever have children. But at the same time, she's, extremely feminist, but it is obviously hurts her. And she's trying to deal with kind of that option of she almost kind of doesn't have a choice in the matter. Like, if you don't want to have kids, that's great. But if you can't have kids and it's not your choice, obviously that's, even if you never wanted to have kids, it's still something that it will, affect you. And I think they kind of ran through that with her. And that was kind of what I saw. And then for William, he, I think he was probably one of my, I would say the least fleshed out character of the group, but still very well done. He obviously has some type of, he kind of dives into his issues with women, where he almost feels like he has like FOMO, where he wants to love women or be with someone, and then when he does, he realizes that it's kind of the allure is over, and then he doesn't know what to do, and he kind of moves on to the next thing, and he just seems kind of lost or unsure, and he just wants to make people happy and get the validation he sort of desires, and validate that he's good at something or can do something well. So it's kind of what I saw.
Mm-hmm. I definitely felt like he was the only one. He grew through the hippie generation. Dorothea might have been a little too old to really partake in that hippie generation, and William, literally married a woman and they went and lived in a commune in Northern California, right? But at heart, he's a much more simple kind of man. He enjoys his pottery. He enjoys working on things. He's a little more blue collar, but he's also tender and can be emotional when he wants to, but he's not exactly I think people are flinging a lot of emotions at him, and he doesn't always know what to do or say. Mm-hmm. Do you think that's fair, Kelly?
Yeah, I thought William was so sweet when they're describing him living in the commune, and it's just, he didn't feel like he was enough for that community. Wasn't smart enough, wasn't all these kind of things. He came up really poor and all this kind of stuff. But he just wanted to be with his girlfriend. And it's just he just wants simple kind of things. And I think that that's so refreshing and pure. And I just wanted to protect him and be you don't have to be anything for anybody, and you can just be yourself. And that's really, I think, the kind of the message for all these characters is you don't have to be anything that anything outside of you is expecting you to be or assumes you're going to be. You can really just be yourself. And I think that kind of comes out of all of them. And
Yeah.
William, I don't know, a sweet, tender guy like that is just like, aw, he just needs hugs, and I really, really liked him.
Yeah. And finally, Kevin, what did you think the main conflict was with Dorothea and the tensions that arise in her throughout the movie? What do you think they were?
Oh boy, that's a great question because obviously Dorothea is our main character. Now Jamie is also part of this as well, but I do feel like the focus of this film really is on Dorothea, mostly because she's the driving force in all of these lives, the one that brings them together, the roof over their head, the advice, the motherly influence, all of these things, and she does it with a smile, even though there's a lot of pain, even though there's a ton of loss, a lot of, all of the times that Jamie calls her out on something and it's so on the point and she just is so flabbergasted because she doesn't know what to say. That scene where he read out of the feminist book to her, I must have missed the part ahead of where she was reading something, because all of a sudden the narrator's voice was Jamie's and it was just describing who it sounded like was her mother. And then I've come to find out, like, it's literally written, but not about her. It was just perfect. It was intended that way. There was just certain aspects about that. So anyway, to answer your question, I'm also rambling because I thought Dorothea was one of the best characters we've had in one of these films because of just how much. Well, Annette Benning is brilliant. I thought that she just did a great job of having all the different tensions that you possibly could have. But each relationship was unique, right? You could tell she was an ex-lover to William, right? She's being a mom not just to Jamie, but also ruining my line here.
Julie and
Abby.
Abby.
Both the girls as well.
Yeah.
While just trying to understand that she may die someday and leave her son without anything.
I felt like Dorothea, because of the generation she grew up in, she is more reserved. She does not want to open up to her son a lot. And that's kind of a thing the whole movie is that, Jamie gets angry at her because she won't let him in a bit more and open up to him a bit more about what she's really thinking all the time. And that's kind of a generational thing, I think. But at the same time, she seems like a pioneering woman.
I know.
Like she was such a great feminist character, but like a feminist during that time when women, were expected to be housewives, in the 50s and also, in the 40s. But she didn't like that. She didn't accept that. And then she's constantly fighting with Abby on her definitions of feminism and her ideas of feminism and this new pioneering movement with the sexual revolution of the 70s. And I love that juxtaposition there. Cole, what did you think about her character, but also just Annette Benning's portrayal of Dorothea? Because I do think that this might be one of the best acting jobs we've seen in an A24 film so far.
Yeah, I mean, her character was extremely well written, extremely fleshed out, and the acting performance behind it, like some of you have mentioned, even the scenes where she doesn't even say anything, and just the way that you can see kind of the emotion and the reactions behind her eyes and stuff are truly amazing. And her character itself, I thought was awesome, especially the way with all the different generations, because she truly is she is a feminist, right? But she was a feminist because she went to go get her pilot's license to go fight in the war. She went and got a job and was the very first person to do blueprints at that company, and she didn't need her husband to support her and her son, and she did all of these amazing things, and she had a son very late in life as well, which was obviously odd back in the day, and she did all of these things, but now she's being almost kind of confronted with Abby, who is the newer generation, and all the things that she did or pioneered are kind of just the norm now, and now you have a new group of feminists that are pioneering. But I loved her character. I typically don't like movies that do a lot of heavy narration because I feel like a lot of times it's not done well. And if I'm watching a movie, I'm watching a movie to see the characters and their reactions and their interactions and stuff, right? And I also absolutely love slice of life films, and I've cannot believe that I've never seen or heard of this one. But the use of the narration in this movie was very powerful and very strong. Definitely added to it and really kind of gave additional emotion and stuff to it. And just overall was fantastic. I really enjoyed her performance.
Yeah, agreed. So my next question will be the soundtrack question, so we probably know where this is going.
Can I interrupt, Derek?
Yeah, sure.
I wanted to ask you a question because this, I was looking into Mike Mills, and this is kind of a personal project that he did, and it's about himself and his own mother. And I was curious from your perspective, because you also have, your mother gave birth to you when she was in her 40s. Super,
44,
yeah,
yep.
super rare, just like Mike, just like our characters in this movie. And you write movies as well. So I was kind of curious. You and Mike probably have a similar kind of way of looking about things, being in that same kind of like profession. And then with the same kind of generational gap between your mom. Like, I'm just wondering, it's too many similarities for me to not ask, like, how did that kind of like affect you when you were watching this movie? Did it hit you more because of that?
It did and it didn't, because I have a dad in my life, and my mom and my dad have been, happily married for, I think, nearly 40 years now. But my mom was also a pioneering woman. Mm-hmm. She went on strike at MSU because the journalism school was falling apart. It was a complete piece of crap at MSU. And her and a bunch of other people took their typewriters and went to the streets and marched down the streets at MSU to get more equipment and to get a better journalism school. And they gave in and built a better journalism school, and that's the school you see at MSU today. I felt similarities between my mom and Annette Benning, but then I also, I don't think my mom's that as reserved as her, so I couldn't just cast my mom into that role and see my mom there in that way. I think there's just some slight differences where I couldn't do that, but I do think, him being a creative and me being a creative, maybe that could be a mark of growing up with a good female role model in our lives, Yeah. But, All right, next question, soundtrack question. We have a large array of music in this film, and it may be one of my favorite soundtracks of any A24 film that we've watched. And why I think the music is so powerful in this film is because I think it is establishing the difference in generations of our characters. We have everything from Louis Armstrong to Black Flag in here. So, Kevin, what did you think of the use of music in here and the use of it to show the generational differences of our characters?
I am so glad you asked. Let me first state, I am a big Talking Heads fan. So the fact that this film got to feature so much great Talking Heads and using it as kind of this idea of pop versus punk was brilliant to me. Talking Heads makes me happy in general. Listening to them just uplifts my soul a little bit. So that was a pretty cool piece for me right away and allowed me to kind of really enjoy the rest of this as well. The jazz aspect, you touched on it a little bit with, the Louis Armstrong. We had some Duke Ellington. There was a great rendition of In a Sentimental Mood in this. I highly encourage, again, to watch this just for the soundtrack alone. But then we also, like you mentioned, get this Black Flag, the Germs, some of this, the Raincoats, some of this really, at the time, completely out of left field music that, there's a line in here where Annette Benning's character, or Dorothea is like, they sound bad and they know it, right? So it was kind of like the idea that you break down some of what this music meant to a generation from inside the generation, and you also see what someone on the outside looking in may think about it. I really liked the scenes where Dorothea goes to the clubs and tries to assimilate with the younger crowd. Her wearing her floral patterned mom top, going into the with the crowd and just trying to be part of the punk. It was great. Cinematography was wonderful in that time. Using the idea of Jamie going to a show as his reaching out moment, his kind of I want to be a rebellious teen or be a little bit older. I thought that was an awesome idea as well. And it just altogether was a great soundtrack put together by a great writer that made the music work for his film. Oftentimes we get music that's just kind of in the background, but that's not the case at all. And it was well done, for sure.
Yeah. Abby's quote, I just want to say it because I really like this description of punk.
Yes.
It's like they've got this feeling and they don't have any skill, and they don't want skill because it's really interesting what happens when your passion is bigger than the tools you have to deal with it. It creates this energy that's raw. Isn't it great? Kelly, what did you think of that line?
I loved that line so much.
Yeah.
I'm like, how can anyone hear that and not immediately understand like why people love that genre? That was so well written and well delivered.
And Cole, yeah, like I also want to focus here on the generational differences and how they use music to, differentiate the generations. And also just like the style of music, like that quote right there kind of represents what maybe that 70s punk generation was all about. And then jazz more represents Dorothea's generation. Do you think that's fair?
Yeah. I mean, Mike Mills, he used so many different tools that usually you see like one or two of these things in a film, but he does so many different things so well, from the like multiple backgrounds and storylines of fleshed out characters to the narration of characters to like the music choices for these characters. Like everything is just extremely well thought out and extremely well executed, to the point where it clearly shows all these lines, but then the lines start blending, and as different generations try and understand the other ones around them. And I did read, I'm not the biggest music guy in the group. I like music, but I'm not like Kevin or Eric and Kelly probably are all more music heads than me. But I was reading about it because I was interested about all the music in this thing. And Mike Mills apparently, kind of when he had all the actors and everyone laid out and picked for all their roles, he had them all kind of find songs or pick music that they think their character would listen to and like, and bring it to set, and they would basically have essentially like dance parties with the sounds and musics that they saw and liked based off their characters, and then they started using them in the film. And I think that was kind of a unique spin, and kind of showed some of his way he operates as a director too. That was pretty good, and it obviously worked well because I enjoyed it and came across very well on film too.
I saw that too. I watched a Vice interview with Mike Mills, and where he was talking about what you just said, Cole, where every character has a specific song, and then they have kind of like a genre that he used to help them get into character and help inspire them. And he says it more eloquently than I'm about to slaughter it, but it was along the lines of like music just, it transcends just like words, and it like can put a feeling into you, and it can help you embody then a character. And I thought, what a brilliant idea, like what a brilliant idea from a director. I'm surprised I've never heard of this happening before. And it's just, as somebody who's like music just deeply influences me as well, that's such a great way to just help flesh out your characters further. And it clearly worked because all these characters are really fleshed out.
Yeah, definitely. And the writing was just so good in this film, too, to the point that it was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay.
Surprise!
And, yeah.
Come on.
I'm just going to say some of my favorite lines here from Dorothea. Having your heart broken is a tremendous way to learn about the world, and wondering if you're happy is a tremendous shortcut to being depressed. There's some, like, really just, like, great, like, wisdom lines in here. And I guess I'll go to Kevin for this. What was your favorite comedic line or scene in the film? And maybe it doesn't have to be comedic, but there was certainly a lot of great comedic lines and scenes in this film. So I guess I'll just ask, what was your favorite line or scene in this film?
I'm going to pull a Kelly and defer to my co-hosts, because I honestly don't know. I think I kind of already did it a little bit with my reference to the punk rock and just kind of that whole thing, but let me think on a little bit more, because I bet you I can come up with a better one.
Kelly, do you got like a big
I actually
line or
got
scene
this.
that you like?
Yeah.
Okay.
That question about wondering whether or not you're happy is the shortcut to being depressed. I thought That was so poignant, and that I think when Eric and I were watching that, I like clapped, and I was like, "Amen, that's so good." But another scene, and that really stood out to me with really strong writing, and especially because a man wrote this, so props to you, Mike, is when Julie and Jamie are talking about why does she have sex with these guys if she regrets it half the time. When she says, well, she's never had an orgasm from having sex either, but then gives all of the reasons why she still does it, and even if she regrets it half the time, her response of just like, he goes, why do you still do it? And she says, because half the time I don't. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so well, like I already used this phrase, well written, well delivered. The way that Elle Fanning plays this character, and she does this like coy little smile as she's kind of describing the intimacy that she can get. And you can like see her as she's describing it, like it's so alive, it's so like real. So I thought that part was really, really brilliant and very endearing, and I loved that.
Yeah, I thought it was a great idea. You don't necessarily have to have it be a line necessarily about regretting sex, just the idea of regret in general. Like, half the time I do, but half the time I don't, and that can mean a lot of things. The other cool line that I took away, and I remember writing this down, is when we were talking about why can't I remember Greta Gerwig's character's name? This is Abby. Abby's life, and she's describing her time in New York. And she just basically says, I was so cocky, so angry, so happy. And I went, that's a unique combination, but I can see it. It didn't throw me off. I was like, I feel exactly where you come from, like how that can be a thing. So I just thought that was really unique and kind of felt in that moment exactly how it encompassed her character.
Didn't she say something like New York City was so disgusting? I loved it.
Yeah, yep. That was awesome. And that kind of like encapsulates that time in New York City where punk rock really started getting big. It was because of the grit and grime of New York City that punk rock grew out of that with the Velvet Underground, and grew out of Detroit with the Stooges, Iggy Pop, and MC5. So I feel that to my heart. But so now we at the start we kind of talked about how each character, they have these kind of very real life tensions and conflicts they're all dealing with. And I think we really first see our characters resolve their tensions and conflicts with Jamie and Julie. When they go to the hotel room, they run away, go up the coast, go to a hotel room, and Jamie gets lost for a little bit. Cole, how do you think Jamie and Julie really ended up resolving the tensions and conflicts within them towards the end of the film there?
Yeah, I guess I don't know. I wouldn't say that they ever truly resolved their like conflict. I think, which is a part of life, that not everything gets resolved, and sometimes things just, you get older, people move away, move apart, and those things kind of fall to the wayside. So I don't know if it necessarily got resolved, but I think the way that they portrayed it, and that whole scene, and just their whole interactions throughout the film were very, very like real and raw in terms of like, kids growing up like that are, childhood friends, and then now they're going through puberty, and one of them is obviously the quote unquote friend zone and all that stuff, and trying to navigate that while still keeping relationships, and then eventually you get to a point where you kind of come to the conclusion that it's never going to happen, and you either continue to that relationship that you've had for a long time, or it dissolves and falls away. But I think they did a really, really good job with it. And then Elle Fanning did a phenomenal job acting and the portrayal of that, and kind of her explanation throughout this whole entire film. I didn't realize I didn't look up anything about the film when I watched it. So the whole entire time I'm thinking someone had written this from their perspective, right? Which it was, but I was thinking it was from like the woman's perspective, from like Elle Fanning's perspective of like a woman who had gone through a lot of things and maybe had lost a very close friend of hers because she didn't feel that about them in a romantic way, and she was able to explain it in this film so eloquently. And then I come to find out it's written by Mike Mills, which is extremely impressive. Yeah. But I don't know, it was just very well done. And again, I don't know if they necessarily resolved it, but you can't resolve everything in life, and they just continue on and see where it goes.
I think that's a better question. Kelly, do you think that any of these characters actually resolve any of their conflicts or tension in here?
Does anyone in the world ever fully resolve their conflicts and tension?
I mean, we got rid of the Nazis in World War II.
But did we? Around. I think that there's still some around.
They're still around, I guess, yeah.
I think that this is a movie that doesn't tie everything up with a little bow in the end. What's kind of cool is that we do know the future of what happens to all of our characters through these kind of not narration. I mean, yes, narration, but also it's like a diary entry that can see the future. And I love that kind of way that they just described through to the ending that through that method. But I don't know. I don't need them to resolve their conflicts and tensions in order for me to think that it was a really good movie. And spoiler alert, I think that this is a really good movie. It makes them more real, and that they're messy, and that there's going to be more problems, and we know that there's going to be more problems, and not everyone gets a happy ending, but happy endings turn bad, and bad turns good, and that's kind of how Dorothea explains it to Abby as well when she gets that really hard news, and she's like, this is going to be really bad for a while, then it'll get better. And then it's going to get worse again. I shouldn't have told you that part. I thought that was so real, and I feel like I've had that conversation with girlfriends of mine, too, and it's not necessarily something that only girls can say to each other, but it's so real. So I think that follows through for all these characters to the end, too. It's just ups and downs, just like all of us in the world.
Yeah. Kevin, do you think this kind of, none of the tensions or conflicts were resolved in here? And I'm kind of getting that we think that this movie dropped us into these characters' lives for just this period of time. Obviously that we do flashbacks and fast forwards, but it's focused on this period of time, and they just kind of let us live with it as a slice of life film. Do you think that is fair?
Absolutely. I referenced it earlier in one of my answers, how critical I thought it was to bow tie these stories with a conclusion, how we got to live into their future a little bit and see kind of what those characters achieve in their lives. I thought it was incredibly poignant to see Abby having a family, to be able to bring children to term, even though that she was told that she couldn't. I thought that's a very important part in her character development. And same for Dorothea's character with our ending, to have her find love again, to have a partner who she can confide and trust and who loves her, to give her the gift of, flight during her birthday. I thought that was just a brilliant way to do it. I don't think the movie would have been powerful for me if we didn't get that, to be honest with you, where we didn't see resolution on camera, but we got just enough for it to feel good that you could wrap up each story without thinking about it too much. And I thought that was just brilliantly done.
Mm-hmm. And I'm going to go so a lot of films, high school films usually, will fast forward into the future and kind of tell us this is what happened with each of our characters. But that can be very cliche if it's done in a wrong way. But I think they do that in this film in a very non-cliche way, and it actually feels like a pretty good resolution for each character. Cole, do you agree that this wasn't done in a cliche way, and they actually used this technique as an ending pretty well?
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. A lot of times, a lot of people don't like when they movies kind of end with a cliffhanger or not giving them the full answer, and I typically like when they do that because it sometimes is more impactful. But for this film, I thought it was very well done to the point where it added a lot to it. I feel like a lot of films that do it, you talked about like the high school films are just kind of, it's like, oh, well, after the High School Musical, Troy Baker goes off to whatever, right? And no one really cares, and it doesn't really add anything to the story. But this one, I feel like it really did add stuff and kind of gave you, I don't know, it kind of made me feel good to like know, even though I only knew these characters for 2 hours, I felt like I really knew them and was like a part of their almost life, and it was like kind of nice to see how they've continued to grow and progress throughout their life. And it also one of those things where they talk about how they kind of all went off on their own, and they didn't really keep in touch too much after that. And that's a sad fact in life that we deal with, where there's people that are a part of your life at very pivotal, like important parts, and then they just go on and they continue living their life and you continue living yours, and that's it. That's the way it goes, and it's not always clean and cut and dry and stuff. It's messy and it's life. And I don't know, I thought it was very well done, and I really liked the ending and just kind of the pseudo resolution we got. And I also thought it was very realistic, each one of their like kind of endings of how they ended. It wasn't kind of like a fantasy or like the perfect fairy tale ending. It was all more of kind of like a realistic of what you kind of saw for the future for each of these characters. So I liked it a lot.
Yeah. And yeah, like Kelly and I discussed this a bit at the ending, that the ending was kind of Dorothea finally opening up to Jamie a bit more. And it's, Jamie hitching on Dorothea's car with a skateboard, riding through a small California highway. Even though she makes a joke about, like, how she might never, ever fall in love again. She makes a joke about falling in love with Humphrey Bogart in a future life. But, like, that's just kind of her way of, talking and her sense of humor. And Jamie says, I thought that this was just the beginning of a new relationship with her, where she'd really tell me stuff, but maybe it was never really like that again. Maybe that was it. Kelly, we kind of discussed this quote because I think we kind of misheard it. Do you think that was Jamie saying she never really opened up to me like that again, and maybe Jamie just accepted kind of her not fully opening up to him all the time?
I suppose, but it's drenched in maybes.
Yeah, true.
So it's hard. I think it's so open-ended for me, and I think that maybe he just learns to speak her language a little bit better without her having to exactly tell him things. You know what I mean? Maybe he starts to know how his mom speaks a little bit more, because she definitely is branching over to like learn about what he's into. Maybe he begins to understand her like layers of wit and humor, because she does. She really likes to use that, and that's kind of the crutch that she uses when things get too close to the heart. And that's just going to be the case with some people, even with their most intimate loved ones. So maybe that's how I kind of take that. Not that they necessarily won't ever be like that open and close together again, but they just find a different way to navigate it.
For sure. Cole?
Yeah, the way I kind of took that quote was kind of similar to what Kelly was saying. Is, there's the old saying that, people never change, right? Like, she might want to be more open with her son, and she might be a little bit, but it's never going to be necessarily as open as he would like, or get the exact answers that he would like. So I think it's kind of that gray area where she's trying and she wants to, but she will never be as open as he wants. And then, he also needs to, like Kelly was saying, learn her way of communicating and understand her boundaries and stuff, and know that, you might not get, the answers or that exact relationship that you want and hope for. And sometimes, you're going to get the best thing that you can get from her, kind of thing. And you either need to accept that or move on, kind of thing. And that's the way I kind of took it, was, because no one can just like flip a switch and be like, you know what? I'm going to be completely open and honest now, and everything's going to be great. It's, it's not a fantasy fairy tale, right? It's real life. Like, people are people, and they're set in their ways to a certain extent. And, I believe people can change and mold, and they're, you like to think we grow as people and become better, but in the core, there's still that, everyone's got their thing. And so that's kind of the way I took it, where they grew a little bit, but it's never going to be a complete, commitment to it kind of thing.
Yeah. With the ending, I definitely think of that quote that Abby said, which I'm paraphrasing here, that life is just never how you plan it to be. And kind of the grand majority of us go through our lives in this humdrum way. And maybe showing art at their local art studio when we had grand aspirations to be a big artist, or maybe moving to Sedona and starting a pottery studio, or maybe falling in love in New York City and moving to France, but never, making anything with your career side of your life, And I think we see in Dorothea's case that we find little beautiful things in life to make us happy. And that was kind of that shot at the end of her flying over Santa Barbara, finally flying a plane. It's like she never got to get to the Air Force, right? But she was so happy just flying that plane, like, I finally did it. You find these little things in life that make you happy, and they may not always be the grand aspirations that we have, but there are little moments throughout life that really make you appreciative for where life has taken you. Kevin, do you think that's a fair assessment of the ending there?
Absolutely. I think the ending was intentionalized, I think, for all of us to kind of look at all of the characters and imagine kind of how life treated them in general, right? And what their aspirations, how they were, rewarded or not rewarded, or how their story was told through whether or not they maybe achieved those aspirations. In Abby's case, it was a family. In William's case, it was always the pottery. And, in Dorothea's case, it was flying. And we see it on. And I think that it was, also the idea that life is what you make of it, right? It's the idea that each of us have an opportunity to, Cole alluded to it. I think that you have somebody in our life, but they may not be there anymore. But it's kind of what you gain from that person, the stories that you're told, and what you're allowed to do with your future because of it. So kudos to them on that.
For sure. Well, I think it's time to get to our ratings of our final film of the 2016 year of A24. Cole, did you have one more thing?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, can we all agree that William's pottery kind of sucked, though? Like, what was going on with his bowls? I was trying to figure that out.
Yeah. It was his passion, man. It was his passion.
Hey, man.
It's the passion.
It's those kind of bowls where I'm like, I don't know their usefulness, but I kind of liked what about it that I could, like, see this. Like, I feel like he has, like, these, like, big hands that are used to, like, fix cars in a house and stuff.
Big
and he has, like, his, like, finger
hands.
indents all over the bowl. And I'm like, that's kind of cool. So I can't completely shit on it. I never would know what I would do with pottery or ceramics like that, but I like the influence of these really large thumbs.
Large thumbs.
Well, one thing we didn't touch on too much that I guess I'll touch on it now, mostly because I thought it was cool. Some of the cinematography choices that they had with some of the tracing of the cars as we're seeing some of the road trip scenes. Some of the lighting effects were brilliant. There was some time lapse in the club that I thought was also very cool. Even from that opening scene with the fire, I just thought there was some real cool attention to detail in this film from a cinematography standpoint as well.
I definitely thought the first time they did that with the car, because it's Jamie and his friends going out to the punk show, I thought it meant that he had done acid.
Same.
Yeah, same.
That's fair.
And then I went, oh, is everyone who's driving a car tripping? Like, but...
Yeah. It's just a visual effect. But so now I think it's time for our ratings. This is the final film of the 2016 year of A24. Cole, your final rating of the 2016 year of A24. What did you think of 20th Century Woman?
I really liked it. It checked off a lot of good boxes for me. I'm a big slice of life guy. Love those films. I really loved the dialogue and interactions between all these characters. I think the actors that portrayed all of them did a phenomenal job. The writing was exceptional throughout this film, which really, really brought everything together, and all the interconnecting stories and the connections to history and the flashbacks and the narration, and like he used all these tools that I talked about that you might see one or two in a film. Like you might see a film that has some narration that deals with historical stuff, or you have a film that does a lot of flashbacks, and then film that has interconnected storylines and multiple, almost like feeling like you have multiple main characters. And this one did all of those things, and did it very, very well. This was definitely a film that I did not feel like it took too long. It didn't, I never got bored of it. And even though it was a 2-hour movie, and, that extra 30 minutes, I think, was still very well utilized, and was good in my book. And overall, really liked this movie. Very impressed with Mike Mills and everyone attached to this. Can't believe I had never heard of this movie, and I had pretty low expectations coming into it, thinking it was gonna be just another one of those A24 films like The Laggies or Barely Lethal or something, where I'm just like, yeah, this is gonna not be great. It's gonna be some kind of I don't know, weird comedy that I'll watch. But I loved it. I think everyone should watch it. I think it's very, very good. I think if everyone watched it, you'd get a better appreciation for understanding, generational differences, women empowerment, feminism, understanding kind of the common man, and just life in general. I think it's a phenomenal film, and I'm giving this a solid A24.
Woohoo! So I guess I will go next here, since I talked a little less than all of you, but maybe I didn't. I don't know. Either way, there's so many parts I enjoy about this film. I've actually seen this film before, and I wasn't as okay with the ending before, and how it doesn't exactly resolve things for me and tie it up into a bow, because I feel like I used to really like that about films like this, that are more slice of life films, that are more heartwarming films. I used to like it when it was just tied up into a bow, and maybe it's just my age, and as I've gotten older, that I'm more okay with things not being tied up into a bow, because maybe I've lived a bit more life, and I've realized that not everything gets to be tied up into a neat little bow. So it made me like happier with the ending this time that I watched it. And the cast was phenomenal. Like Annette Benning, definitely, this was one of the best roles I've seen in an A24 film so far. And now comparing it, probably watching it 5 years after I first watched it, and comparing it to all these other A24 films I've seen, she does such a phenomenal job in here. The writing, it's so many like little quips in here, little lines. That whole menstruation scene that we started out with, that was fucking hilarious. I couldn't stop laughing at that. And okay, I gave The Witch an A. And this film doesn't exactly have the methodical directing that The Witch does. The kind of, like, Robert Eggers puts his own stamp on The Witch with his directing, but I think this film puts a stamp on it with Mike Mills' writing. I think that you can tell his style as a writer in every film he does, and I've seen a few other films, like Beginnings I've seen, and that's his mark on this film. And I'm not going to give it an A+ to put it up there with Moonlight and Ex Machina as like probably my favorite my favorite two A24 films I've seen in the last 4 years. But I'm definitely going to put it up there with The Witch on an equal level and give it an A, just like Cole, because I think acting, writing, just the decision to drop us into this generation, juxtapose all the different generations against each other, and just really go into the music of the time and the times before, and it gave me like just a very American feeling in a way. And yeah, it was kind of like America 1979. Okay, I feel it. I've lived it, and I know what's going on there. So anyway, A24 for me. Next up, we will go with Kevin.
All right, so a lot of the films that we call are A24 classics, a lot of the ones that get the most A24 vibes are some of these more mysterious movies, some of these more, I guess, out of left field type. We talked about The Witch and Ex Machina, some of these fantastical films. And that's what has been, for the most part, has defined what feels like an A24 movie for a lot of folks, not just us, but just kind of in general when talking about this movie production. I also found this movie feeling incredibly A24 for me as I was watching the whole thing, even without some of those major fantastical aspects. I thought that some of the choices that they did from a styling aspect made this feel indie art house. But at the same time, the idea that you approached this movie the way that they did made it indie art house. Cole alluded to it perfectly in his review of taking all of these different types of movie making skills and putting them all into one pile and seeing what comes out on the other side. It feels pretty indie, right? It's the idea that you're kind of taking all of these unfinished stories and putting us in there for the small 2 hours that we get, pulling us out on the other side and saying, well, what did you think? It really did feel very A24 for me. And I think that's probably why I enjoyed it so much. Going into it, I watched the trailer with my wife, and we were kind of like, all right, well, now we kind of see what we're getting ourselves into, but we weren't really sure. But coming out of the other side, we both were immediately impressed. We both said that we were not expecting it to be that good, and we were super satisfied with kind of the way we felt while finishing that movie. So if you're listening to this and you haven't watched it yet, you probably should go do it. I'm recommending it for all my friends and family. It touched on the major themes that a movie should make you feel. Kelly talks about that with her movies. If it makes you feel, it's done a good job. It certainly did that for me. There was emotion, there was highs, there was lows. There was, a lot of different parts that go into watching a film like this. And it is really lucky on our part that we get to talk about it. I think is pretty cool. This entire review has been us kind of fawning over this movie, but for good reason. And it shared a lot of really cool themes with the viewer. And we're lucky to go on that journey. And that's why we watch movies. That's why we sit down and take the time to invest in it. And this movie delivered on all parts. The actors and actresses all did a phenomenal job. The writing was clearly lauded with awards. The soundtrack was some of the best we've heard. And I'm excited to kind of watch it again after I've given a little more time to kind of sit in the A24 library and just kind of also see how the rest of the titles fall around it. And I'm not going to depart from my coworkers or my co-hosts on this one. A24 for me as well. I know I'm not too divergent on this one, but it deserves an A, so it's definitely going to get it.
For sure. Kelly, round us out. What did you think of the last film of the 2016 year of A24?
All right, haters of 20th Century Woman. I'm glad that you all stayed along for this long. It's time for me to go through all of the negatives and downfalls of this film. Thanks for listening, and let's get started. Just kidding. I'm also going to rant and rave about how much I think that this movie was really phenomenal. I read a lot, not a lot. I was reading some of what people were saying in the A24 film group on Facebook. Shout out. Somebody had said, this is their comfort film that they come back to, over and over again. Someone else called it Dark Barbie. And both of these, I was like, okay, this is going to be really interesting. I read both of that before I started watching this movie, so I was afraid it would poison the well. But my thought of what this was going to be, I'm sure we're all familiar with the phrase, pink washing, which is kind of using feminism as a marketing ploy. And I was afraid that this movie was going to be one of those. And I am so relieved that it completely subverted my expectations, which is extremely ironic because I think that's the main theme of this movie, which I really, really appreciated. So here's my list. The unique storytelling of this movie, I think we kind of touched on that with the diary entries, as I call them, and every character is a narrator. I think that people either are going to like that or they don't. For me and this movie, I think it worked phenomenally, and it was a really good vehicle to move us through all the acts of the movie. Something that you guys know I like personally is really dialogue-heavy movies. This one was saturated in dialogue the entire time, so I loved it, and I stayed really engaged the whole time. The camera work throughout this movie, I thought all of the framed shots were really thoughtful. The use of color was gorgeous. We have a lot of sunset-y palettes that we work with, which just kind of adds to the overall feeling of just comfort for me. And the camera is almost constantly moving, which keeps me really engaged as well. So props to both of those, and it makes sense for the kind of story we're telling. The soundtrack, as we've said, was really like broad spanning, immersive, and the usefulness of music is what I wrote down, was, I think, just masterfully used. And I think that what we already touched on with Mike inspiring his characters through music, it is so genuine. So I think that came across really well too. I'll try to talk faster, so I'll get through the rest of my list.
Go ahead, take your time.
Like Kevin said, and I touch on every single movie, is how did I care about these characters in this movie? Yes, I deeply felt for these characters, and this is a weird comparison, but the last time I felt for characters this much with this amount of time was Breakfast Club, which I know I wasn't on our 80s movie discussion, but when I had first watched that movie, all those characters like reached in and grabbed my heart. This movie is similar, where I will rewatch this movie just like I rewatch Breakfast Club, because I just want to see them again. I want to hear them again. They feel really real to me, and I am invested in them. And the way that they speak with each other is so dignified and tender, and it's like just something that I want the world to be more like that. So I will rewatch this movie for that reason. And what did I walk away with is my other thing that I say for any kind of film analysis. I'm like, okay, so what's like the big thing that I'm gonna take from this? And it's this, for me, what I'm taking from it on this first watch, and like I said, I'm going to watch again, and I think that there's so much depth, I'm going to keep taking things away. These bridges between generations is really strong, and I think just a genuine curiosity and respect goes so far, and it's so nice and positive to see, and this just kind of acceptance of differences, and even when a character messes up, this quickness to forgive, it's really, really sweet. The the power of the feminist movement on men specifically, and how it was able to kind of transform a generation of men, which I don't think everyone always thinks about when it comes to this kind of wave of feminism, but that's the goal of the movement, is equality for the sexes, and changing that kind of idea of gender for everybody, not men and women and any other gender in between. And I think that that's really important as we move on into today, and we keep changing that as we go. But for this kind of this wave, this punk wave, feminism, and for Jamie, our character, how did feminism frame him as a person? And I think it's so good. So
Are you saying I am Knuff?
Yeah, I guess so. And that's enough from me as well. But it's tender, gentle, thoughtful movie. And I will return to it. I will recommend it to people. I really, really liked it, which I didn't expect. And I think that I'm going to shock myself here and actually go for the A+, 24.
Whoa. Bye. I think you only gave Ex Machina an A+ 24 before, right? Did you?
I have no idea.
I believe
I don't
so.
compare them to each other. I just
You're
go with
gonna
what I
have
feel.
to put all of our.
Oh, you gave Moonlight A+ also. So,
Okay.
yeah, this is your... Yeah.
It tracks.
Well, cool. So some programming notes. Next week, we will have the Mount Rushmore draft of A24 films between 2013 to 2016. Kind of a look back at our last 4 years of A24 film watching. And then 2 weeks from now, we will have the 2016 A24 Oscars, where we will knight the Best Picture of the 2016 year of A24, the Best Actor, Best Director, Best Actress, Best Supporting Actor, and Best Supporting Actress. And we will have our friend the Martini Shot on this episode. Woo-hoo! Brandon Johnston, who runs an awesome YouTube channel where he makes martinis and reviews films. So, all that being said, thank you for listening. Please rate and subscribe us. And we're so happy that you have come along on this journey with us on A24 film watching, and we are very happy to continue it going with these next few weeks into the 2017 year of A24. Have a good night, everybody.
Bye.
Menstruation.
Menstruation. Well done, Kelly. Had to have it.